affect the electron flow through the wires with one scalar application. I suspect that's what's being done. It's not an ordinary EMF pulse. It's more like scalar application.
And that I'll tell you, that is extremely interesting because you hear absolutely nothing about that. But
Nobody
the fact
knows
of the
about
matter is, and this is another interesting thing, Doc. Tesla was 100 years ahead of his time. He really was, if you think about it.
Well, he was quite advanced, and some of his ideas are, of course, what we do now, alternating current and so forth.
Right. Now,
actually, I guess that was Westinghouse, but it was also Tesla.
He actually, Westinghouse funded it, but Tesla was the guy that came up with it and beat out Edison with direct current. But here's my question to you. He had come up with wireless transmission, energy transmission. So why do you think we haven't delved into that a little more? As far as here we have this antiquated infrastructure, electrical infrastructure that in the United States is really maxing out in capacity and needs to be updated. So why haven't we seen more of an interest in, say, like a wireless energy transmission system, or utilizing something along the lines of instead of using explosion energy, using stuff like implosion energy? You hear it quite often about the ancient Egyptians having the ability to tap into the natural energy that surrounds us. Why do you think we haven't done that? Do you think it's because of where the money is? Do you think it's more along that line?
I don't know of any way to do it, so I've never read of any way to do it, and so I suspect it's just a complete ignorance. And whether or not there is a way to do it or not, I'm not certain. So if there is, it would be phenomenal, I suppose. The only kinds of energy transfer I know of by beam is sending the electromagnetic beams, and that we can do currently for transferring energy from one spot to another. But if you don't have the receiver properly in a proper place and your beam of energy is misguided somehow, you could be frying somebody by accident. I've seen that for relaying of energy, collecting solar energy and satellites, and then beaming it back down, the microwaves down to a microwave receiver and so forth. And but what happens if you miss? It's off a little bit, and the receiver isn't there. They've got solar collectors in Africa and so forth, where they have basically large mirrors that reflect energy, the sunlight, back to a certain collector region, and those things, if they get misadjusted, they can very quickly destroy something with the concentration of the energy. Just simply solar light alone. It's no different than a magnifying glass under a sun. You can fry. Little boys do that all the time, frying things with magnifying lenses. So I don't know of any other kinds of directed energy transfer by beam other than that. So I'm more than happy to learn and see a demonstration, but I've never heard of it, never seen a demonstration.
Well, I will most certainly forward you some of Dr. Bearden's work and documentation. But I think and this may help you a little bit too. The name of the actual wave, it's called a longitudinal EM wave. Does that ring a bell with you at all?
Well, that sounds like longitudinal electromagnetic. Yeah, so that's going to be basically a directed magnetic field that you could send out, I don't know of any easy way in which to generate something that's going to be high intensity.
Yeah, but I don't think it's easy.
Yeah. Dr. Wagner.
Go ahead, Brian.
Isn't it true that a gallon of gasoline, or let's say a gallon of diesel fuel, no matter how slow it burns or how fast it burns, it's going to emit the same amount of waste or carbons, or what carbon emission is? Its footprint, I guess, is going to be the same?
Yeah, that's true. A gallon is no matter how fast you burn it, it's going to release the same amount of carbon.
Okay, well, here's my question. If we can build a 2-liter Volkswagen mid-size car that gets 50 miles per gallon, why can't we build a 1.3-liter economy car that gets 90 miles per gallon?
Well, we probably can.
I believe we easily could without having to go out in space or bring Tesla even into the picture. And that's pretty much a no-brainer. But I have a question about the Tesla technology for AC. I'm trying to get a grasp on how it works. And this is the theory that I have. To make electricity, you have to have a wheel, and you have to have something that powers the wheel. Hydroelectricity is, of course, and you also have a windmill, hydroelectricity. Could you say that Tesla electricity is produced by the rotation of the Earth's axis? You see what I'm saying?
Tesla said that electricity is everywhere, and the generators don't make it. It has an effect of pumping it. The electricity is already there.
What would you say, Doc?
Well, what he's, I think he was getting into the equivalent of our space is not pure nothingness, but that there is an inherent underlying energy underneath that, and you can somehow tap into that, and that can be manifested as an electromagnetic energy. But I never did understand what his theory was, and apparently neither did any of the theorists I've read understand how it would work. I know there were people who looked into it, and that was somehow my understanding of why the funding got pulled on that, is that they couldn't quite understand how it was going to work.
Well, but J.P. Morgan pulled the funding because he was interfering with other profits of oil and other energy companies.
Yeah, that could be too. You certainly hear a lot about that, and I know there's a certain degree of truth to that. There is a lot of vested interest in a lot of fields. That's why you see Gulf Oil down there, getting exempted from environmental testing, just because there's so much money that you could buy your way out of all kinds of rules.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway,
I wanted to make a comment about CERN. We're closing down on our time here. It seems to me, after listening tonight, that what we're observing there in Switzerland is only the tip of the iceberg. There's some pretty profound stories that haven't been told about this operation. I can't believe that countries would pump money into that operation unless they had a promise of something back. I just don't believe they would put billions and billions of whatever the unit of money is into that for nothing, just for their goodwill. What do you think of that?
CERN was established way back in the 1950s. A lot of the
out of curiosity, Doc, who's the brainchild of CERN?
Oh, it was basically it was the people who developed the nuclear weapons and nuclear technologies back in the 40s and 50s.
So the same people.
The same people, but they wanted to do, say, well, we've developed all this monstrosity of nuclear weapons and so forth, and we want to do something that's going to be just pure research and for good. And so we'll establish this over in Europe, and that was the underlying theory behind it, just to get basic knowledge of how matter interacts and so forth, and basic underlying physics knowledge. And to a large extent, that's much of what they've been doing. Most people never even heard of CERN, other than a few people in the physics community here in the U.S., but most of the average person never had heard of it before. And it wasn't until they've done this next leap forward, or backwards, depending upon your point of view, this next leap of getting into a regime of energy that does not occur in nature. These lead collisions that they're doing now does not occur in nature, and it's developed a very large public awareness in Europe and lesser so in the U.S. because of that.
They've been operating for at least 60 years on donated money.
Yep.
How many billions do you think they've run through in 60 years?
I'd say it's probably about $1 billion a year on average. I don't really know what their total
Wow.
budget's been.
Why are the countries putting up? Why are the bankers putting up this money? There is another reason here. We're not seeing it.
Yeah, there's got to be. I mean, you just to play Mr. Wizard just doesn't ring a bell to me. You know what I mean? What do you think, Doc?
Well, I think it is playing Mr. Wizard.
Really?
Yeah, we do a lot of, the U.S. government funds that much and more every year anyway in the U.S. on things that are basic research without any, all across, we have all these national laboratories, all kinds of funding from the Department of Energy, all kinds of funding from the National Science Foundation, all kinds of funding everywhere else, and it's just, there's a huge self-vested infrastructure.
Yeah, I suppose you're right, because if you think about it, after all that and all that, I'm wondering, and I'm going to look this up. I'll go to the GAO and figure out how much they spend each year in scientific research. And I'll bet you, Griff, that our share of the CERN budget is probably a drop in the bucket when you think about it. I mean,
but we're bankrupt.
And we're bankrupt. Don't get me wrong. And it's $1 billion, right? Is that right, Dr. Wagner? That's what they get a year.
It's only $500 million.
Okay, and we're 10% of that.
No, I mean our share is $500 million. We're 10%. The total cost of new cost for that machine was $5 billion, but they have another $5 billion of the basic prior costs that were built into it as well. But the U.S. budget portion of it is it's closer to $600 million now. I think now thereabouts, and that's only a tiny fraction of what the U.S. spends in basic science research.
Wow, but you think about it, where's the taxpayer outrage in the fact that $500 million goes to CERN? I bet you if the taxpayers were more aware of the things that were going on, and the fact that we're broke, and the fact that here we are looking at making some serious cutbacks in the economy, in our budget. Why in the hell are we worried about smashing two lead atoms together to try and create something that, in the grand scheme of things, not only could wipe out the planet, but I mean, of what use is it in the near term? You know what I mean? I just can't see at this point in time, I think it's time to circle the wagons and say, hey, you know what? Guys, we can't afford this. This is sick.
Joe, contrast what you just said with what I've been telling survivalists as far as the material things they should be stocking for the collapse of the economy. I've been saying toilet paper and tampons are the most important things you should be stocking. Now, compare that to the billions of dollars we're spending in Switzerland. Now, doesn't that contrast? I mean, that's crazy, isn't it?
It is. It's absolutely insane.
People don't have food to eat, and they're stocking things for the collapse of the dollar, and we're spending billions of dollars while there's 20 million people sitting in the Gulf of Mexico that are getting sick as we speak.
Right, exactly right. And Doc, I mean, no knock on the scientific community for sure, but the people, the United States, and the people of the world for that matter, should have a say in where their tax dollars are going. And if this is, and if this is right now, if this can't be a priority, it's like, your budget at home. If the first thing you do is you try to put food on the table. If you can't put food on the table, you're not going to go to the movies and have a night on the town and go buck wild when your kids are at home with no food. You can't do that. So,
well, I agree that we should be spending money on things that are going to be not only productive but also creating the jobs in the process. And I do like the general concept of pure basic scientific research. And because you never know what avenues that might develop and what benefit there might be.
Right.
But at the same time, you have to do that within reason. And to me, spending this money on something where there is this horrendous risk is not reasonable whatsoever. And,
let me ask you this, Dr. Wagner. Where do you think, in your opinion, being following all this stuff,